Nubia Barona was born on May 26, 2000, alongside her twin brother Victor. They were born in Washington, D.C., to Sandra, Dr. and Victor, a couple whose lives were already fraught with challenges. Sandra, at the time, was battling severe issues with drug and alcohol abuse. Prior to Nubia and Victor's birth, she had already lost custody of 4 other children due to her inability to provide them with a safe and stable home. From the very beginning, Nubia's life was shaped by hardship and adversity. Nubia Barona was diagnosed with congenital adrenal hyperplasia, a condition requiring specialized medical care. Although experts strongly recommended placing her in a foster home equipped to manage her medical needs, for reasons unclear, the decision was made to leave her in the care of her biological mother. The mother claimed to be sober and in the process of rehabilitation. By 2003, after it was determined that Nubia and her brother Victor were not receiving adequate care, the twins were placed under the guardianship of their father. However, this arrangement was short-lived. In 2004, their father was accused of inappropriate acts of an intimate nature involving a child not under his care. As a result, Nubia and Victor were removed from his custody and placed in the foster care system. After moving between various homes, the siblings were eventually placed in Miami, Florida, with Jorge and Carmen Barona. Jorge operated a pest control business, while Carmen was a homemaker. The couple had already adopted a child with autism and had a biological daughter named Jennifer Perez. A few months after the twins joined this new family, a nurse raised concerns with Child Protective Services. She reported that the Barona couple was neglecting Nubia's critical medical checkups, which were essential for managing her health condition. The nurse even recommended that the couple should not be allowed to adopt the children due to their apparent lack of concern for Nubia's well-being. I am Barbarona Patas. Despite these warnings, the authorities permitted the adoption to proceed, leaving both children in the couple's care. Further troubling information surfaced in 2005 when Nubia confided in someone at school that her father was forcing her into situations that violated her privacy. It remained unclear whether she was referring to her biological father or her adoptive father. The Department of Children and Families, DCP, initiated an investigation, during which it was apparently determined that the accusations referred to Nubia's biological father. The case was subsequently closed. However, in 2006, school staff contacted DCF again, this time to report a significant bruise on Nubia's face, which they identified as a clear sign of physical abuse. As a result, the Barona couple was ordered to take Nubia to an appointment with the Child Protection Team of the Miami Health Department. The couple delayed the appointment by a week, and by the time Nubia was seen by doctors, the bruises had faded. The doctors ultimately supported the couple's explanation that the injury was the result of an accidental fall. Concerns did not end there. In 2007, new allegations arose when school authorities reported that Nubia appeared extremely thin, was often hungry, and carried an unpleasant odor. DCF investigated these claims, but the Barona couple argued that Nubia's condition was due to her medical issues rather than neglect or poor hygiene. The investigation was closed without further action. A year later, the Barona couple began the process of adopting Nubia and her brother, Victor. However, this process faced resistance from the children's court-appointed guardian, who expressed concerns about their well-being. Charlotte and Victor. The court-appointed guardian, a man named Paul Newman, became a point of contention in the adoption process. The Barona couple accused Paul of undermining their efforts and claimed that his accusations of neglect stemmed from a personal conflict with them. Unhappy with his actions, the couple wrote multiple letters to influential figures, including then Florida Governor Charlie Crist. In these letters they described their care for Nubia and Victor in glowing terms, portraying themselves as loving and attentive parents. Under pressure from these appeals, Paul Newman was removed from his role as guardian without a formal explanation. Shortly afterward, in May 2009, Nubia and Victor's adoption was finalized. However, by 2010, authorities received complaints similar to those made in 2007. These new concerns included reports that Nubia was losing her hair. The Department of Children and Families launched another investigation, but as before, the Barona couple attributed the issues to Nubia's medical condition and her prescribed treatments. Once again, the case was closed without any action. The tragic culmination of these events came in 2011. During a routine patrol, a Florida highway patrol officer discovered a van parked on the side of a highway. The vehicle bore the name of Jorge Barona's pest control business, and a strong odor emanating from it raised suspicion. Upon inspection, what initially seemed like an ordinary situation quickly revealed a harrowing scene. In the driver's seat sat Jorge, 53, conscious but disorientated and visibly anxious. In the passenger seat was 10-year-old Victor, unconscious, shaking, and suffering from convulsions. Officers immediately called for medical assistance, unaware of the deeper horrors that would soon come to light. The situation took an even darker turn when paramedics arrived at the scene. They found Victor in critical condition, visibly injured, with severe breathing difficulties. A subsequent investigation uncovered that Victor's body was covered in acid, a substance so pervasive in the vehicle that it had soaked into the carpets and seats, rendering the air around it toxic. As authorities examined the vehicle further, they made a discovery that froze everyone in horror. Upon opening the back of the van, they found boxes containing unlabeled chemicals. Amid the chaos of sorting through the hazardous materials, officers uncovered a black garbage bag. Inside the bag were human remains. The scene, already horrifying, became deeply chilling when the remains were identified as belonging to 10-year-old Nubia Barona. Her body bore signs of extensive chemical exposure, including acid, evidently used in a gruesome attempt to obscure the crime. The van, which had initially appeared to be a simple work vehicle, was revealed to be the site of unimaginable tragedy. A child's grave, and a damning testament to years of systemic failure. Despite repeated reports and warnings from school staff, medical professionals and others, Nubia's suffering had gone unanswered, her cries for help lost in a system that failed to protect her. No one seemed to truly care about Nubia or her brother. The scene was devastating, and the case quickly drew widespread attention. Nubia's body was transferred to the medical examiner's office for a thorough forensic analysis. Meanwhile, Victor was fighting for his life in the hospital. Doctors decided to keep Victor hospitalized due to the severity of his injuries. He had not only suffered significant external burns, but also severe internal reactions caused by inhaling the toxic fumes inside the truck. Upon further examination, medical professionals discovered multiple older injuries that painted a grim picture of prolonged abuse. Victor's injuries included a broken collarbone, a fractured arm, deep scars on his buttocks and lower abdomen, rope marks on both wrists, and more. These signs of abuse were undeniable, and authorities quickly grasped the full magnitude of his suffering. On March 2, 2011, Victor was finally discharged from the hospital. However, he did not return to his adoptive parents. Instead, he was placed in a therapeutic foster home, where he began the arduous journey of healing, not just physically, but also emotionally. Shortly after, Victor found the strength to recount the horrific events. Though his voice trembled, he told police everything, helping to piece together the years of abuse he and Nubia had endured. According to the police report, on February 11, 2011, the Barona couple tied Nubia's hands and feet, moving her from the bathroom to the bedroom, where Jorge brutally beat her. Victor heard her cries and pleas until silence confirmed her death. Jorge, visibly shocked, later confessed. On the day he was found, he admitted to driving with the intent to set the van on fire and end his life, devastated by Nubia's death. He claimed he gave Victor sleeping pills, poured gasoline on himself, and tried but failed to ignite the fire, insisting he did not want Victor to die with him. As the investigation continued, authorities uncovered even more disturbing details. Victor's injuries revealed a clear and horrifying pattern of abuse, including numerous bruises and marks that contradicted Jorge's account of the events. The investigation also highlighted glaring failures within the child protection system, which had repeatedly failed to safeguard Nubia and Victor. The tragic case gained momentum thanks to Alessandra, Carmen's granddaughter, who frequently visited her grandmother's house where Nubia and Victor lived. Alessandra's image of a loving family shattered when she witnessed troubling events and bravely confided in her therapist. According to Alessandra, Nubia and Victor were often tied by their hands and feet, forced to stand for hours in the bathtub. Their hands were untied only during meals. Alessandra also revealed that Carmen forbade her from speaking to the children during visits, amplifying their isolation and despair. Days before Nubia's tragic death, Alessandra's therapist made a critical call to child welfare authorities, reporting the abuse Alessandra had described. Unfortunately, this intervention came too late to save Nubia. Alessandra also revealed that Nubia had confided in her about feeling threatened by their grandmother Carmen. She recounted that Carmen had explicitly warned her not to disclose how the children were treated, insisting it was a family secret. This crucial testimony underscored the toxic environment the children endured. Tragically, despite the therapist's report, the complaint never received the attention it warranted, a failure made even more devastating after Nubia's body was discovered. Following these revelations, Alessandra was immediately removed from her mother's custody and placed under her father's care. A judge also ruled that Carmen and her family members were prohibited from having any contact with Alessandra. Another disturbing detail that emerged involved Jorge, the couple's other adopted child, aged 11. He reportedly attempted to disclose a secret to an investigator shortly before Nubia's death. However, his efforts were dismissed, with Carmen describing him as low-functioning and ordering him to remain in his room watching television, silencing any attempt to speak out. As the court proceedings progressed in late February, Carmen filed for divorce from Jorge in what appeared to be a desperate attempt to distance herself from the case. However, on March 5, she was arrested without bail. Both Carmen and Jorge were charged with aggravated child abuse and first-degree manslaughter, with formal charges filed on March 23, 2011. Additionally, forensic analysis confirmed that Nubia had been brutally beaten to death shortly after the authorities were informed of Jorge's hearing. In the wake of the charges, Jorge attempted to end his life on 2 separate occasions. On the first attempt, he jumped backward from his cell's sink, falling headfirst onto the concrete. He sustained visible injuries and was treated, later being declared competent to stand trial. However, when the time came for his court hearing, Jorge refused to cooperate with the officers and did not appear in court. A short time later, Jorge tried to take his life again, prompting his transfer to a hospital for a CT scan. Afterward, he was returned to jail and placed in the mental health unit. Despite these attempts, the judicial process continued. Both Jorge and Carmen pleaded not guilty, despite the overwhelming evidence against them. Prosecutors, however, were determined to pursue justice and called for the death penalty, emphasizing the heinous nature of the crimes. The couple faced separate trials, with Jorge's initially scheduled for September 28, 2015. However, following a request from his defense attorneys, the judicial process was delayed, leading to public outrage and growing demands for justice. Meanwhile, the Florida Department of Children and Families acknowledged that Nubia's death highlighted the agency's failure. They admitted that multiple abuse and mistreatment alerts had been reported over the years, but were never properly addressed, revealing a severe oversight in the system. They acknowledged that the opportunities to intervene and prevent the horror had been repeatedly ignored. As a result, then Florida Governor Rick Scott signed a law allowing Victor to receive nearly $4 million in compensation. Although this law provided a compensatory measure, it could never truly repair the damage he had endured. The memories remained, and they could never bring back his beloved sister. As the years passed, the judicial processes were delayed. By February 21, 2020, Carmen stood on the verge of facing the death penalty. In a desperate move, she chose to plead guilty to first-degree murder and multiple counts of child abuse. As part of her plea agreement, she agreed to testify against her ex-husband Jorge. This decision was an attempt to exchange her death sentence for a life sentence, and the prosecution agreed to the arrangement. Carmen hoped that her sentence would be deferred until she could provide testimony against Jorge, whom she claimed was the primary instigator behind all the violence the children had suffered. However, just days later, Jorge's attorneys requested another delay in his trial due to Carmen's plea agreement. The man's defense attorneys argued that the woman's decision to testify against him had altered the legal process, but this request was ultimately rejected. As time passed, in March 2021, while in pre-trial detention, Jorge was brutally attacked while asleep. He sustained bruises to his face, and according to the police report, 5 other inmates were involved in the assault. The authorities indicated that the attack stemmed from the nature of his pending charges, which earned him contempt from many of the other inmates. Despite his injuries, Jorge survived and was placed under strict custody for his protection. The police searched his room, finding no sign of the attacker. Months later, in August 2021, after a long period of delays, Jorge fired his legal team. His new defense argued that Jorge was unfit to stand trial due to his mental health issues. As a result, in February 2024, a court hearing to assess his competency was postponed. Authorities and the press began discussing how this case had become emblematic of judicial delay. After 13 years, Jorge's trial was still pending. The case had come to symbolize the overburdened, time-consuming judicial system and lengthy processes that often seem to favor the accused. Meanwhile, Victor continued to struggle with the trauma of his past, seeing no glimmer of justice for the future. In March 2024, Jorge, in a Florida state prison, was declared mentally incompetent. The judge's decision followed a brief hearing where 3 medical examiners evaluated him. According to media reports, 2 of the specialists concluded that Jorge was unfit to stand trial, unable to comprehend the judicial process or collaborate with his defense. As a result, he was transferred to a specialized facility supervised by the Department of Children and Families, where he was to receive treatment to stabilize his mental health. The judicial process, notorious for its delays, was indefinitely suspended. However, the judge clarified that if Jorge's condition improved and doctors deemed him capable of assisting in his defense, the case could resume. This left the future uncertain, and in the meantime, Victor continued to wait for justice for both himself and his sister. On November 19, 2024, significant updates in the case emerged. After an exhaustive psychological evaluation by a team of experts, it was determined that 57-year-old Jorge was finally fit to stand trial. As of the current moment, November 2024, the trial date is still pending, a process that has been years in the making and has garnered attention not only locally but across the United States and beyond. Well, that's it for today's video. A truly shocking and heartbreaking case that still has not seen justice for 2 innocent children. They were placed in a system that was supposed to protect them, but instead ended up with individuals even worse than those who brought them into this world. It's truly devastating. Let me know in the comments what you think of this case, and if you found this video informative, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I upload 3 or 4 times a week, and by subscribing, you'll get a notification every time I post a new video. Until next time, take care, and goodbye.